Good morning. Thank you for joining me for another 5 good minutes with the Word. I'm Barry Bryson, and we're continuing our study of the life and letters of the Apostle Peter, and we're in 1 Peter. And today we're going to be looking at chapter 1, verses 13 through 25. We introduced the book of 1 Peter a few days ago. We talked about the fact that Peter has written this book from Rome, which he makes clear at the end of the book, shortly before his own execution and probably after the execution of the Apostle Paul during the persecution of Nero, which was the first time that the empire of Rome have identified the Christians as enemies of the state and treated them as such. And we also said that this book of 1 Peter is a textbook, and it really is that and was used that way for the next 2.5 centuries, a textbook on how we prepare for and deal with the persecution of the state. We saw in the first few verses 1 through 12, a real textbook of its own, a real deep conversation about Father, Son, and Spirit, and how we experience God as Father, Son, and Spirit, and also faith, hope, and love, and the role of that triad in our lives. The thing that I want us to note from the very first verse, before we go to verse 13 and read that passage, is that he described those people who are living in Pontus, Galatia, Cappadocia, Asia, and Bithynia, Turkey, in other words, as resident aliens, people who are residing as aliens. Which is something that Paul tells to the Philippians in Philippians chapter 3, verse 21. Your citizenship is in heaven. You don't belong here. And that's something that he's going to emphasize throughout, that we do not belong here. So, he ended the passage, verses 1 through 12, that we looked at by saying the same thing that he said on the day of Pentecost. You are living in historic times. You are living in the moment prophesied throughout all the Old Testament. You are members of the kingdom that the prophets talked about but didn't fully understand. You are living in times the angels wanted to know about, but were not allowed to see into the future. These are the times that you're living in. So verse 13 begins with a therefore. Since that is the case, since we're living in this moment of history, this is the way we should be. Therefore, gird your minds for action, keep sober in spirit, fix your hope completely on the grace to be brought to you at the revelation of Jesus Christ. As obedient children, do not be conformed to former lusts, which were yours in your ignorance, but like the Holy One who called you is holy, be holy yourselves in all your behavior. Because it is written, you shall be holy because I am holy. That's from Leviticus chapter 11. And other places in Leviticus, by the way. If you address as Father the one who impartially judges according to each man's work, conduct yourselves in fear during the time of your stay, knowing that you are not redeemed with perishable things like silver or gold from your feudal way of life, inherited from your forefathers, but with precious blood as of a lamb, unblemished and spotless, the blood of Christ. For he was foreknown before the foundation of the world, but has appeared in these last times for the sake of you, who through him are believers in God, who raised him from the dead and gave him glory, so that your faith and hope are in God. Since you have, in obedience to the truth, purified your souls for a sincere love of the brethren, fervently love one another from the heart. For you have been born again, not of seed which is perishable, but imperishable, that is, to the living and abiding Word of God. For all flesh is like grass, and all its glory like the flower of grass. The grass withers, and the flower falls off, but the word of the Lord abides forever. And this is the word which was preached to you. All the themes that are going to be repeated throughout the rest of the letter are here. We need to notice the connection with Paul, reiterating, echoing so many things that Paul has said. I specifically notice he talks about the feudal way of life you inherited from your forefathers, which sounds like a phrase lifted right from Paul. Read Romans chapter 6 to read something similar. And I wonder if he's read Romans now that he's in Rome. and has had access to it, or if he certainly is knowledgeable of Paul's writings, which he talks about later on. The theme is the present and the future. This is where we are now, so you've got to get ready, gird yourselves. That refers to putting on your belt. And for an ancient Hebrew person, man, belting yourself, and then you could take the back of your long garment and tuck it up into your belt and create yourself a pair of pants so that you can run, so that you can fight, so that you don't have to be hindered by your long flowing garment. Get ready to act. To act, what does that mean? To fight? No, it means to be obedient. To be obedient to God, because it's going to be hard to now. Get ready, get your mind in gear, because you're going to have to be obedient to God, and you're going to have to behave like a Christian, and that's going to be really hard. And if you don't suck it up right now and get your mind in gear and get your heart steeled for the task, you won't do it. You will fail. And then there's the eschatological consciousness, the future. This is temporary. Soon Jesus is going to come again, and all is going to be revealed, and everything that you've been promised is going to be given to you in Jesus Christ. I love that he goes back to that passage from Isaiah in verse 24, all flesh is like grass, from Isaiah chapter 40, which is the beginning of the suffering servant passage, that massive meditation on the Messiah. But also because it reaches back to Psalm 103 and David and Psalm 90, where that image is first given to us, the psalm by Moses. Just connecting Moses and the journey and deliverance and being aliens, being wanderers, and David, the king who brings victory, the forefather of the Messiah. And then that passage that foretells the Messiah. I mean, he just brings us in and reminds us who we are and the price paid for us. Because the theme throughout, and I know I'm past 7-minute mark right now, the theme throughout is going to be obedience. That's going to maybe mean the shedding of blood, because Jesus has shed his blood for us. Jesus has loved us sacrificially and died for us so that we can be eternally saved. And that's what he emphasizes here at the end of chapter 1. Okay. Thank you so much for joining me for what is now 7.5 good minutes. We'll enter chapter 2 tomorrow. Thank you.